Folks, let's welcome Derek Kwan to the stage next. Derek is a game dev based in Canada, and he also specializes in developing organizational culture and leadership. Furthermore, he created the Game Discovery Exhibition, which is an independent games festival in Canada. So, without further ado, let's see that hype in chat and welcome Derek to the stage.
Good morning, Game Devs of Color. It's a pleasure to be here at the start of what's looking to be an awesome event. My name is Derek Kwan, and I'm super excited to talk with you about studio culture. For some background, I currently lead a nonprofit that grows capacity for games culture and game development in the province of Alberta in Canada. I'm also a freelance consultant who helps companies enhance their organizational effectiveness, and I've co-founded a couple of indie studios as well. In addition, I've volunteered with the University of Alberta's game development program for the last 10 years, helping students make games. So today I'm here to talk to you about how we can work together to build incredible places to work. We're going to talk about the nebulous collection of organizational features that hopefully make our professional lives livable. Now I know that some of you may be thinking that it is absolutely wild that in 2022 we have to have the conversation about why we, as adults, should be nice to each other. I get it, it's frustrating. But as an industry, we clearly have a bit of a problem, so let's talk about it. Now, even if you are generally a kind and collaborative colleague, coworker, or manager, it's always worth doing some self-reflection. And that's what I hope this talk will do. Whether you are starting a career or if you lead a studio, everyone has a role in the organization's culture. So by the end of our conversation here today, you will have some new or old tools to either use or revisit that you can employ to create or influence a more positive workplace culture. Now, before we get started, I want to assuage your fears about listening to advice from someone who looks like they're fresh out of school. I can assure you that while I may look young on the outside, I am an old man who is dying on the inside. So if you are now also interested in my skincare routine, feel free to DM my Twitter. But in all seriousness, I've been working in organizational culture in some way, shape, or form for the last 10 years. My academic background is in education, technology management, and business, and I also have a designation in project management, in addition to certifications in Agile, change management, lean, equity, diversity, inclusion, and psychological safety. I've worked with startups with less than 10 employees and massive organizations with over 14,000 employees. So I'm confident that when I speak to you here today is scalable for organizations of any size. Now, if you saw me talk at GDC, this talk is an extension of that previous conversation, whereas that talk focused more on individual agency, this talk is more focused on the organization itself. All right, so let's dive in. But first, let's define culture. What the heck is it? Now, I know culture can seem kind of nebulous, so let me use my favorite metaphor. Let's say your studio is an ocean. Your developer colleagues are the diverse creatures who dwell here. And here we've got some seahorse artists, some programming squid, and of course the sharks from the legal department. In this ocean studio, we are surrounded by water. We breathe it, we swim in it, and it holds all the things that we need to survive. The water nourishes us. But that ocean water can become toxic. And if it does, we all perish in a grisly and gruesome end. If it's not obvious, your studio's culture is that water. So what do we do to make sure that that water is safe? Metaphors aside, let's dive into the details. Organizational culture is a way of being. It is the why and the how of doing things in a workplace. It's also made up of many things. Among them are values, attitudes, beliefs, behaviors, and our actions. But culture isn't just a prescriptive list of rules or policies that you can put on a poster to slap on the wall. No. Organizational culture is both tangible, like the poster and our behaviors, and intangible, all the ingredients that make what's written on that poster both authentic and meaningful. And that leads us to why organizational culture is something that we should absolutely be paying attention to. A recent survey by PricewaterhouseCoopers suggested that culture helps with change and to build competitive advantage. And that distinctive cultures resulted in increased revenues, increased employee satisfaction, and increased customer satisfaction. So as you can see, it is clear that culture has a huge impact on organizations. All right, Now that we've discussed what culture is and why it's important, I'm going to be breaking down this talk into 3 different sections. These sections are foundations, enablers, and taking action. Foundations are the basic building blocks of building an awesome culture. The foundation is essential, so we'll be spending quite a bit of time here. Enablers are mechanisms that help to accelerate and catalyze culture change initiatives. They are no less important than foundations, but there is more variability within the enablers that may be harder to control. And finally, taking action will provide you with some tangible next steps so that you can level up your own culture change journey. Now, foundations. Like I said before, they're the building blocks of creating a positive workplace culture. Now, I'll be honest and let you know that you can find a plethora of culture experts who will all tell you their own formulas for foundational elements that might influence your culture. To be honest, there is no panacea for companies to follow to build a positive workplace culture. All of these methods have some validity. It's just about finding the right fit. Now, the important thing is that you identify which mechanisms you want to use to influence your workplace culture, and then you stick with them. That said, here are some of the common foundations that I have found in my research experience. Values, purpose, vision, mission, psychological safety, and equity, diversity, and inclusion. Let's talk about values and why they're important. Values are our guiding lights. They help us to ground our conversations about what we as humans and as an organization care about. Whatever you choose as your values are going to show your colleagues, prospective employees, and the public all the things that your company believes to be important. Now, the trick is not to create a draconian regime around your values. Declaring your values instead helps us find personal alignment with the values that the organization has deemed important. Not everyone is going to buy into every value in the same way, and that's actually okay. It's human nature. Just remember, values serve as a basis for common ground. They're a way for us to consider our actions in a self-reflective manner through a shared vocabulary. Now, here are some pro tips and pitfalls from my experience with teaching values. One is keep your values simple, because you want folks to internalize these values. If you can't remember your values, you're going to have a real tough time integrating them into your lives and into your studios. That said, if you need additional explanation for your values, that's also okay, and probably recommended because you are looking to find that common ground. Now, as values are those guiding lights, they should be revisited often. Staying true to your values takes practice and accountability, but if values are the one thing your organization does well, it will honestly make a profound impact on creating a distinctive and cohesive culture. So let me give you some examples of when organizational values have hit home or when they have missed the mark completely. In one organization I was part of, we had 5 one-word values: safe, helpful, accountable, integrated, and excellent. And the fact that I can still remember those values and rattle them off by heart speaks volumes as to why it is important to keep things simple. Of course, we talked about these values all the time, so even though they were short and sweet, we still were able to prescribe to them some meaning. For example, safe meant different but similar things to those of us working in an office compared to those of us working on a construction crew. Nevertheless, we still agree that safe was an incredibly important value for us to share. Now, in terms of pitfalls, don't weaponize your values. Values are not laws, they're guideposts. They're not intended to punish people for not having behaved in a prescribed way. They're designed as markers for the things we see as important. Weaponizing values poisons the well and makes a mockery of what values are intended to signify. Another pitfall. In the vein of keeping things simple, don't have too many values. In contrast to the aforementioned organization with 5 values, another one that I was a part of had 9 value phrases. So to be frank, I'd be hard-pressed to tell you what all of them were. And lastly, it is really important to authentically live your values by finding ways that your own personal values align to the organization, and to make sure that your values are authentically shared by others. The fastest way to build cynicism for a culture change initiative, or to kill it entirely, is for people to not authentically live those values. Okay, so purpose, vision, and mission are foundational elements that help us to communicate why we do what we do and where our organization is going. As Brené Brown says, clarity is kindness, and purpose-driven organizations with strong visions provide a line of sight so that every single employee understands what their role is in pursuing the purpose and vision of your organization. So, purpose justifies our existence, vision provides clarity, and mission gives direction. Now, in terms of pro tips and pitfalls, In a profit-driven world, it is becoming increasingly difficult to attract talent with purpose and vision that speaks only to shareholders and financiers. So your purpose and vision should reflect who you are as a company, the kind of people that you are, and the kind of impact that you want to make on your team and the world. So purpose and vision that reflect a triple bottom line approach, people, planet, and profit, can really help you to signify the kind of studio that you want to be. Understanding that we are all part of a larger system will really help to transform the industry overall for folks who are not only passionate about the craft of game making, but also making the industry an awesome place to work. So consider a purpose that reflects that. Now, for me, I've actually had the luxury of working with public sector for the last 10 years, and when your purpose is to make people's lives better, it's pretty easy to connect your work to that systemic idea. But I think it's actually even more important for profit-driven companies to declare a purpose. Whether that purpose is to create incredible products or to build a company that takes care of people who make the games, as we outlined in one of my former indie studios, determining the reason why your organization exists is not only good for culture, it's also good for business. It just helps you focus. Now, in terms of pitfalls, yes, so visions do change and they should be updated when there's an important shift in your vision, but don't do it too often. Make sure you know what your vision is, because changing what true north is can somewhat be jarring to your teams. As well, making a compelling vision is really important. And that's tough because it has to be ambitious, but not unbelievable. It has to be inspiring, but not cheesy. And in all honesty, I think the best visions come when they're agreed upon by everyone in the studio through a co-creation process. My thought is that people who make games are inherently creative, so coming up with a shared vision can in and of itself be inspiring. Okay, let's chat about psychological safety, which is one of my favorite topics. Psychological safety is so important to building an awesome studio culture. And what is psychological safety? Well, psychological safety is a shared belief that the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. So in other words, you can ask questions and bring up issues without fear of punishment. Think about the impact of fear and silence from the people in your studio. As devs, you are the ones who have the best understanding of how development is going. And no dev sets out to make a bad game, but if there is a culture of fear and no one feels safe enough to provide critique on a game's design, what do you think the cost of team silence might be? Mental health is also linked to psychological safety. So psychosocial risk factors in the workplace caused by fear can affect mental health, leading to mental harm like PTSD and depression. If a situation with the lack of psychological safety goes on for too long and is ignored, it can create mental injury. Risk factors that create fear include bullying and harassment, while poor workload management can lead to fatigue and burnout. There are many great resources for psychological safety, some of which I will link at the end of the presentation, but I'd like to point your attention in the direction of the Canadian Mental Health Commission's 13 Factors of Psychological Health and Safety. If your studio is thinking about how to enhance psychological safety, the Canadian Mental Health Commission has some excellent tools that explain these factors and how to use them. Now, personally, I can tell you firsthand what the impact of low psychological safety is. Having been part of toxic workplace environments where high conflict personalities sought to divide teams rather than unite them is something that I'm all too familiar with. Now, these teams can create severe mental harm, and I know of many game developers who now have PTSD from their experiences working in industry. And that's not acceptable. The bottom line is this: we all have an obligation to create and reinforce psychological safety amongst our peers and our employees. Taking away someone's psychological safety will undoubtedly harm their mental health and reduce your organization's effectiveness. Now, I'm not going to go into all the factors for psychological health and safety, but suffice to say, it's all connected. You can see organizational culture is one of the top things. Definitely check it out. It's well worth it. Now, the next element that I want to talk about is equity, diversity, and inclusion. DEI to some people as well. It's another foundational piece to building an awesome culture. Now, personally, I like to put equity first because, in my mind, equity is the ultimate goal of EDI efforts. And by that I mean, equity does not always mean equality. Equity is about fairness, and your colleagues and employees definitely do not all have the exact same needs. So without equity, diversity and inclusion alone can sometimes lead to authenticity gaps, like being hired by an organization but not having a seat at the decision-making table as a person of color. Awesome cultures are also inclusive. They aren't exclusive. And that means we create a sense of belonging. For your studio to have an awesome culture, people should feel like they belong to the team, but not in a way that assimilates their personality. Rather, belonging with uniqueness is what we should strive for. and we can get there through understanding intersectionality, taking into account the various facets of our identities and understanding that each identity intersection will give us a different life experience. So as you can see from this diagram, here are some of the aspects of intersectionality that can affect who we are and, of course, change our needs in the workplace. Okay, with our foundational elements out of the way, I want to talk about enablers. Enablers are catalysts that accelerate the development of an awesome culture. Today, I want to talk about 3 enablers that I think are extremely important. 1 being self-awareness and reflection, 2 being leadership, and the 3rd being horizontal and vertical networks. Self-awareness and reflection. Okay. I often feel like a bit of a broken record when I say that one of the greatest tools that any individual has for bettering themselves or organizations and their products is self-awareness and reflection. So when you work with others in collaborative projects, it is absolutely imperative that you figure out how to best work with one another. These self-reflective exercises are decent opportunities to reveal surface-level insights about yourself, and yes, while those work personality tests are a little hokey, they're actually worthwhile for starting conversations about your work styles with your colleagues. Granted, I know self-awareness and reflection can be tough, as it may reveal aspects of ourselves that we're uncomfortable with, unhappy with, or even blissfully unaware of. But for us to create awesome cultures, we need to develop that self-awareness, evaluate who we are to our core, and then be committed to changing the things that might make us poor colleagues. And then comes the work. Because when you have the ability to take charge of your own personal development, you really do become an agent of culture change. So, here are my thoughts for how to build self-awareness. First of all, don't beat yourself up for not being perfect. That's not the purpose of learning self-awareness and reflection. Rather, self-reflection is an opportunity to think about past conflicts so that you can improve the outcomes of future conflicts. And on the other hand, there will be definitely times when the actions of others will bring harm to you through no fault of your own. Nothing you could have done to prevent it. And in these cases, take your self-reflection time to think of ways to engage in self-care, to recognize that an injustice was done to you and that you need time to heal. That's also totally okay. And once you've done some self-reflection, it's worth asking your colleagues for feedback as well. And in this way, the whole team can build empathy around the perspectives of others. Now that you've done some self-reflection, let's talk about one of the most crucial of the enablers for building awesome studio cultures. And that's leadership. Leadership is a complicated topic because not everyone is in a position of power to be able to affect certain kinds of change. However, I'm going to put forth a few leadership tenets that I think are universally applicable to everyone, no matter how far along your leadership journey you are. First, leadership is a service. You don't build incredible cultures based off of megalomaniacal egotists who believe their ownership of a company gives them the right to exploit, underpay, and abuse their employees. The responsibilities of leaders are about helping to elevate those around them, not to serve themselves or to tear others down. In an awesome culture, leaders should leave their titles at the door and put their egos aside. Servant leaders ensure that their colleagues are able to do their best work. And if you think about it, when you've had a kind and supportive leader who has trusted you to take ownership of your work, how does that make you feel? The second point I want to bring up is that leadership is a journey. This means that no matter where you are in your career, whether that's beginning, middle, or nearing the end, you can still take charge of your leadership journey and find ways to continuously learn. There's no such thing as a perfect leader, so we shouldn't deify them. In fact, I would say that leaders are fallible human beings who also need care and attention sometimes. Lastly, I want to talk about how leadership and management are one and the same. Good leaders should strive to be good managers, and good managers should also strive to be good leaders. That means being consistent, predictable, and having low volatility. It also means that leaders don't play favorites because that leads to inequitable treatment. The unfortunate thing about leadership is that poor leadership can break an organization. In one organization that I was part of, nearly my whole team was terrorized by a leader who lacked self-awareness. This leader was more interested in ruling by fiat than facilitating activities that were good for the organization and the workers of that organization as well, to the point where they were actively sabotaging their own team. Extreme fear and a lack of psychological safety ensued. And what was the result? Unprecedented turnover, PTSD, reputational loss externally. These kinds of things are devastating to see. Conversely, I have worked with incredible leaders who genuinely care for the people under their employ. Their priorities were developing their staff, ensuring that their staff had everything they needed to be successful. And these are the leaders who help their employees create incredible results, build legacy products that have long-standing lives, and high-performance teams that stick together. Now, The next enabler I'm going to talk about is the horizontal and vertical network. All right, so culture is an inherently social endeavor. Consequently, for an awesome culture to develop, you kind of need to talk to others. When your organization is small, it is much easier to connect with everyone, but as you grow, so too do your bureaucratic processes, hierarchical rituals, and siloing. An awesome culture cannot abide a low communication environment, and thus it is absolutely necessary to develop rich networks both vertically, in the traditional hierarchical sense, as well as horizontally, cross-cutting the standard lines of reporting. Organizations with horizontal networks are much better connected. Not only do teams know what is happening across the organization, but they're also capable of executing change more quickly, finding innovative solutions to wicked problems, and in creating cross-pollination opportunities for career progression and or professional development. My favorite method for doing such things is to create a network of culture champions, a coalition of like-minded individuals who are dedicated to making the workplace better. I have seen these culture champion networks work wonders. Conversely, I have also seen organizations refuse to implement, or even worse, disband culture champion networks in favor of more centralized culture planning. This is a mistake. And if you'll forgive me for a bit of rant, but dear companies, please stop embedding your culture function within HR. HR is inherently incentivized to protect the organization from some of the likely subversive and foundation-shifting challenges that culture work brings to the table. If you want to fail at creating an awesome culture, one sure way to do it is to stick your culture team into HR. And that isn't to say that HR is bad or it cannot do culture work. It can happen. Just that from a purpose-built perspective, HR shops are not typically set up to do culture work and give it the space it needs to be successful. Anyway, rant over. We're coming to the end, and what comes next? So, after all this, did you want to take the plunge to build an awesome studio culture? Now, without knowing your unique situation, here are my thoughts on what your potential next steps could be. Talk about culture with your colleagues, peers, and others. Start the conversation about the kinds of workplaces you'd like to be in. Make a plan. What kind of changes do you want to see, and how will you go about getting them done? You can start small, you can go big, but either way, what you do will probably have some sort of impact, and that's important. Be the change you want to see. And that's by being authentic. You can live your values and be the person that really holds your organization to account. Now, depending on who you are and what you do, these next steps might look different. For those of you who have decision-making power, you might be able to have more in-depth conversations and build more integrated plans. But if this one takeaway for today, let's all be authentic. Let's live our values with integrity and start a revolution to make awesome studio cultures. All right, so I'm done. If you're interested in connecting with me, here are my socials. You can also check out these additional resources if you'd like. Otherwise, have a great day and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Derek, for that rad talk. Everyone else, have you set up some time with our sponsor booths yet? If not, I definitely recommend setting up some time to chat about potential partnerships and publishing opportunities.